Greetings and welcome into the Sports Shuffle. It is December already, December 2nd, and I am flying Ryan Gokers along with.
Tampa Motormouth Joel Verone saying goodbye to the hurricane season 2022. Goodbye,
Not
and
gonna miss you.
don't let the door hit your posterior on the way out. Thank you.
Yeah, bye bye.
Yeah,
Hurricane season finally officially over.
I- Ian totally, absolutely, completely sucked, and Nicole wasn't much fun.
No, not much fun at all. Um, we're gonna talk about week 12 and talk about week 13. Yes, I did say week 12 and fantasy week of perfection on my end. Yeah, 12 and with a bye week in there, so
I'm
can't complain too much.
I'm actually in a state of shock because somehow in two out of the three leagues I checked, I think I'm actually still potentially alive for the playoffs. I have no idea how in the hell I am, but I
As of right
am.
now, I'm looking like 13 of 13 this year for playoffs, which you can't do any better than that. Yeah. So we'll talk more about week 12. We'll talk about the games coming up in week 13. It's been a minute. There's been some stuff going on, so we'll get caught up to the present, and then we
Yeah.
will dive into the future here.
Don't
In a little
worry,
bit.
we're not going to do an entire hour on Kanye West, but the material is definitely there.
We do
Like
have to talk about Antonio Brown briefly. Um,
I
warrant out for his arrest in Tampa for domestic violence. It
yeah
does.
the
I know you said something about him and Kanye battling to just absolutely torpedo their careers and lives
yeah because
during a competition.
Antonio Brown apparently pitched out all of the his companions' clothing. There was definitely some violence as a part of that. I'm sort of trying to censor it a bit, and it doesn't sound like a good situation at all. But then the police actually came, but then there was a standoff. There was allegedly he had guns in the residence, and apparently, as I still checked last, they still haven't arrested him, and it's like an endless standoff. It's just a crazy, ridiculous situation, and it's Antonio Brown, so you almost expected. It's like you don't blink. It's like okay, it again. It's Groundhog Day.
Skies blue, waters wet. Antonio Brown is effing insane. Yeah, that's pretty much the stuff you can count on in life. But ugh, God, what a garbage person! Just
Yeah,
a garbage human being.
as he was at his prime, I think, in Pittsburgh. He had
Mhm.
some flashes of brilliance in Tampa, helped the Bucks get to the Super Bowl, but then just oh my God, just went to absolute just
Yeah. It's a shame because someone who's got that much talent and
yeah. I
possibility
mean,
to throw it all
you,
away by being stupid, that sucks, but
yeah, you saw because some of those games he was just absolutely brilliant, and you're just like, okay, I'm actually cheering for AB, and
yeah.
of course he did his rip off the shirt, and everyone's going, whoa, what's going on here?
He quit on the spot. That's what's going on.
Yeah, because before that you had the Buffalo Bills player who quit at halftime. It's like, okay, yeah, how can you top that? And AB's like, okay, hold my beer. I'll quit in the middle of the game.
Yeah, I'm gonna strip out of gear and walk off mid game. At least the one in the locker room, he was like, I just don't have it, guys. He faced his team, not just like, see you. But yeah, Antonio Brown's still the garbage human being. This is gonna be a long one, so let's jump right into the recaps of week number 12 quickly.
Shall we go in the sports shuffle wayback machine all the way to Turkey Day when we were stuffing ourselves of some form of dinner another?
Yes, so all pretty good games, which is not always the case on Thanksgiving
Yeah,
Day.
because you usually Turkey Day you have well the night game is halfway decent. Two other games are kind of snoozers.
Well, it helps that the Lions are on a little bit of a run. They face the Bills, the Giants and Cowboys both good, Patriots and Vikings both good, and they brought the goods on Thanksgiving Day. Bills do manage to get the win 28-25 over the Detroit Lions. It looked like the Lions were going to take this game for a long time. Josh Allen Very good at fantasy football, very good at real football. Stephon Diggs also with a very good day. Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the top receivers on the week, and the potential start of comeback for DeAndre Swift to relevance. But the Bills do win at that time, moved into first place in the AFCs. They would later succumb back into second place, but that's a game we'll get to in a little bit. But Lions' 3-game winning streak comes to an end.
Yeah, and a little off the field stuff was interesting is Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, of course, were back in Detroit as the snow out week. The previous week forced them to play at Ford Field in their week 11 win.
Yep.
And the team was definitely good temporary hosts. They donated $20K to the Lions Foundation, and they even provided a meal for the roster of all Detroit Lions. I think I saw the post. It was Tim Hortons. So that's not like, here's some Mickey D's or Chick-fil-A. It's like, nah, this is pretty good stuff. So,
a lot of credit to the Bills and their Bills fans. They do a lot of good. I'm not a Bills fan, and as a Dolphins fan, I kind of despise the Bills as an organization, but it's hard to hate the players and the fans of that team. It really is. They do a lot of good.
Josh Allen delivered on Thanksgiving. He fell short of 30 fantasy points if you were needing that particular target. But still, 2 touchdowns, rushing for 78 yards, and another score. He's a dual threat, and this just in. Bills are good.
Yeah, Bills very, very good. They do get this win. Again, at that moment, they had moved into first place by a half game over Miami in the AFC East. We'll get to that game here in a little bit. Then this one, for a lot of people after the dinner, Cowboys 28-20 win over the Giants. I don't think this game was quite as close as the final score indicates, but Zeke Elliott had a very good day. An entertaining game. Saquon Barkley had a pretty solid day as well. So a lot of the fantasy assets that you could have hoped for on Thanksgiving Day all panned out in all 3 games. Just what you want if you're playing a Thursday game. Cowboys moved to 8-3. They pull ahead of the Giants in record by a full game. Also did sweep them on the season. So Giants are going to struggle to get any better than the 6th seed at this point, unless Dallas or Philadelphia completely falls apart. But Dallas 8-3 looks like a very solid team.
Yeah, as Danny Dimes had just 1 TD, but some nice PPR. Dak faced a lot of blitzes. He had his worst week since week 8. And Seattle, Dak had his worst week in November, but them boys still won. And kind of the question is, will them boys be adding a certain wide receiver who had a little trouble on a plane recently? You might have seen the cough article because Odell Beckham Jr. has been to Dallas. He's been to the Giants. And of course, he was found unconscious as a plane and caused a whole mess of craziness. And it was kind of interesting because there's another video of him apparently having a life hack of how to sneak alcohol aboard of planes previously. So it's like, dude, not exactly what you would call a good look, but just a good game, but kind of not what you'd expect from the Giants. Is probably you remember the most image from that game is Brian Daboll throwing the headset after yet another questionable call by the officials. So, but rough time, and Giants on kind of a bit of a slump right now.
Yeah, 7-4. They're starting to fall a little bit down in the standings. We'll have to see if they can hold on to that playoff spot they have right now. But I know Washington, San Francisco, Seattle still right behind them. Only time will tell if they can hold on. But the Giants right now in the NFC are still holding on to the 6th seed, half a game in front of the Commanders and a full game in front of Seattle. So fortunately for them, they are well clear of the Falcons and Lions, who are right now 9th and 10th. So it really is an 8-team race for those 7 playoff spots. Of course, the NFC East we'll get to, or NFC South we'll get to here in a little bit because that's
NFC. It's going south.
Yeah. The entirety of the NFC East and the AFC East until last night's game, at least, was all above 500. Now all are we're above 500. Speaking of that AFC East, the New England Patriots on Thanksgiving Day do drop one to the Minnesota Vikings, 33-26. Justin Jefferson, good game. Dalvin Cook, again, if you had a fantasy performer needing to do something, you got it all day that day. Vikings move to 9-2. They are pretty comfortable in that number 2 seed area. They are a game behind Philadelphia with a loss in the tiebreaker. So they're probably not going to move ahead of Philadelphia. They'll probably be stuck in that 2 seed. It's possible for them to clinch the division, I think, this week if they win and the Lions lose. So it's a good time for Minnesota. They do get that win. New England 6-5 at the end of that game on Thanksgiving. We'll get to the game last night. We didn't get on beforehand. I picked Buffalo. Joel picked the Patriots.
And should have picked Buffalo also.
Yeah. But the Patriots do fall to 6-5 at the time. They were still holding on to a playoff spot. At this moment, the New England Patriots are not holding a playoff spot. They're the 9 seed, but at the time they were still holding on.
Yeah, when you tend to look at the entirety of this game, one cannot put the onus solely on the officials. As if New England had a, a defense, they might have actually had a shot to win, as ultimately Kirk Cousins gets the primetime monkey off his back. And yeah, you kind of have to wonder if how this game, they really fought hard, came up just a scotch short. That didn't sort of affect their attitude for last night's game.
Yeah. All right, and then we move on to the big game of the week, the one we all looked forward to, Carolina and Denver.
Yeah.
Carolina 23-10.
Hashtag sarcasm, definitely.
Yeah, Carolina 23-10 win over the Broncos. I got this one right, but this was one that they're bad teams. You never know who's going to win. Sam Darnold looked pretty decent in his first start of the season. Russell Wilson getting yelled at by his defense on the sideline. People didn't even come to his birthday party on his own team this week. So bad things in Denver all around.
Yes, this game was just interesting as you never know which Carolina Panthers are going to show up. Surprised that Carolina put up 23 points. You have to ask, how many games will Darnold win, assuming he is the starting QB for at least December? As looking ahead, you have, of course, the bye week 13. Then you have Seattle. I'm definitely thinking loss there. You have Detroit. That's a toss-up because Detroit is really hard to figure out this year. They always fight to the bitter end.
And they've been playing a lot better of late.
Tampa Bay, I hate to say it, win, but Bucks main OT out for 3 or 4 weeks. Tristan Wirfs. Evans not himself. Neither is Brady. Bad clock management. Hate to say it, but 70% chance of win. And New Orleans Saints have become god awful. I have to put a win in that category. And shifting to the other flip side of the coin, Denver. How much does ownership regret giving Russ all that money? Here's an interesting fact. The only quarterback that Russell Wilson scored more fantasy points than in Week 12 was, drum roll please, Bryce Perkins.
Yes, the third string quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams against the Chiefs was worse than Russell Wilson, but end of list for people worse than
Jordan Love scored more points
and
than
he played
Russ.
about a quarter.
Let that sink in.
Yeah, he played about a quarter and outdid Russell Wilson. Yeah, the Broncos are dysfunctional. Losing Javonte Williams does not help. Having KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy injured does not help. Having Russell Wilson, the quarterback, does not help. But all in all, it's just a really bad situation in Denver. I think it's going to fall to Nathaniel Hackett's feet first and foremost. And maybe it's a bad scheme. Maybe it's a bad offense. Maybe Russell Wilson's not 100% healthy. And maybe, just maybe next year will be better, more what we expected. But right now, Denver looks like they made a huge mistake getting Russell Wilson.
Yeah, because you mentioned the defensive player chewing out Russell Wilson. Of course, the Broncos downplayed that immensely after the fact. But the other thing that was amazing about that stuff, I'm having problems with the English language today. The other thing that was amazing, the other thing that was amazing about that sequence was you had a defensive player chewing out the quarterback, yet the head coach was just standing there like, the hell?
Nathaniel Hackett does not belong as a head coach. Speaking of people that shouldn't be head coach, Todd Bowles of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oh boy. I feel bad for the guy because he was terrible with the Jets, but he never had a shot. This one, you feel like, okay, maybe he just isn't a head coach.
Bring back
Um,
Bruce. Bring back
if they can, they
Bruce.
will.
Bring back
Cleveland
Bruce.
in Jacoby Brissett's last hurrah as a starting quarterback because one Deshaun Watson is playing on Sunday. That's my
You
favorite
might
game of
have
the
heard.
week.
You might have heard
You
that
might have heard.
little blurb.
But
About
Jacoby
500,000
Brissett goes out
times.
with a win over Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, 23-17 in overtime. Nick Chubb, a very good game, over 100 yards rushing and the overtime touchdown. The Browns might hang around playoff contention if they can win out. Right now, the Jets hold the 7 seed at 7-4. The Browns are 4-7. The schedule's not terrible for the Cleveland Browns. They do have Houston this week, who looks just completely done. And then they've got the Bengals. Let's see, go back. Texans then at Cincinnati against Baltimore. Those are going to be tough, but if they get those wins and they have the Saints, the Commanders, and the Steelers to end the season, it's possible they win 5 of those last 6, get to 9-8, or maybe even win out, get to 10-7 if Deshaun Watson comes back and is what they're paying him to be. And maybe they make a run at the playoffs still. It's unlikely, but it's still there. But that being said, Cleveland ran the ball on Tampa Bay, not good for your Buccaneers. And I think it's time to worry for Tampa, even though they're still first place in the division at 5-6.
Yeah, definitely have to agree with you. Big time to worry as lack of protection for Brady will be a big factor, as I mentioned, from the Carolina Panthers Denver cluster, and a big factor in December. The number one question on everybody's mind: Watson is back, but is he good? That's key. And the Bucks, they had absolutely no business losing this game. I know we're going to talk about this in the Miami game, but it's absolutely amazing how you can have 2 completely different coaching philosophies where you had Coach Bowles with that. I don't know when you heard his excuse in the press conference and you're just shaking your head as a fan going, are you kidding me? You're playing for the overtime? It's like Brady has to have a chance in bleep to do a miracle first before he can produce the miracle. It just
you play for overtime when it's tied with 5 seconds left and you get the kickoff and you're on your own 20. Then you kneel down and you play for overtime. But you have Tom Brady, you have Aaron Rodgers, you have these guys that have made these big comebacks in the past. You give them a shot. But again, Todd Bowles, we'll see about his long-term prospects in Tampa Bay as the head coach. Unfortunately for Tampa Bay, they're probably going to still win this division and have a late teens, early 20s level draft pick. Tom Brady's not getting any younger. There's rumors of going back to New England on the horizon, which I don't think will happen.
I heard that. That's when you're like,
but I don't think so. But
when we get to the Miami game, I'll bring up the difference between the 2 coaches because there's a video out there about Mike McDaniels. I think it's definitely worth it bringing up. And how about this for Tom Brady, flying? Tom Brady is guaranteed to finish with the most losses he's had in regular season since 2009 when his Patriots won the AFC East with a 10-6 record.
It depends how good Brady has been in his entire career, but the Bucks 5-6 leading the NFC South. Everybody's below 500 there. When I talk to people and they bring up the Seattle Seahawks that finished 7-9 and knocked out the Saints, and that's like the team they see here. That's not a compliment. But still 6 games left. Big game on Monday night coming up against the Saints. We'll get to here in a little bit. All right, next up, Jaguars 28-27 win over the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know what to make of Baltimore. They've blown big leads. This is the 4th time they've done it and lost the game, blowing a big lead. They did it to Miami, they did it to Buffalo. This is the worst of it. Losing to Jacksonville. All that being said, Trevor Lawrence has definitely taken a step in the right direction. He's got more touchdown passes already than he did all of last year. He's cut the interceptions down considerably. He had 17 last year. He got 6 this year. He looks much, much better. Travis Etienne left this game early, could have returned, but didn't.
Oh, yeah, you know about that if you started.
Fantasy pain if you started Travis Etienne this week as he got 0.3 points with 3 yards on 2 carries.
It's like a mirror of the Jerry Jeudy thing that happened earlier that you're going, okay.
Did he get Is he benched or no? He got hurt like the second play of the
He
game.
got
Mike
hurt.
Williams when
Yeah,
he
all right.
re-injured his ankle a couple weeks ago. But the Jaguars do storm back. Lamar Jackson had a good game. Mark Andrews had a good game. Gus Edwards was back in full. J.K. Dobbins not going to play this week coming up, but he is eligible to be returning from the IR. So Kenyon Drake's about to be done. But the Jaguars 4-7, and I saw something interesting today. If the Jaguars can win this week and the Titans lose this week, the Jaguars have control of their destiny the rest of the way. If they win out, they would make the playoffs. That seems insane for a team that's 4-7, but again, they win out, they go to 10-7. It's still in play.
Crazier stuff has happened as absolute shocking surprise that the Ravens' ability to hold the lead late comes into question again. As Gus Edwards had an underperforming day, it was nice seeing him out there, but definitely let you down even if you had him in a flex. Brutal day for Etienne managers, ruling fantasy in week 8 and 9, and just poof in recent weeks. And now you have the injury, but it's good to see that he's cleared. And Ravens Day had Ravens fans and just Ravens in general had an interesting week on social media as Lamar Jackson ended up getting tagged in a post attacking him directly on Twitter, and he just lays the smackdown on the fan, and deservedly so, because I know if you're a fan, which is of course short for fanatic, if you're really going, I can't believe we lost the Jaguars still. I don't think it's a good idea to tag your quarterback in a post on social media directly. So that fan got exactly what they deserve. As I'm sure you saw in the post, it was like, ooh, little bit spicy.
Yeah.
And and then, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, definitely concern for the Ravens is definitely real. They still lead the AFC North, but they're in a tie with Cincinnati, and Cincinnati
And
looks like they're coming on strong.
And did you see that other video? It's some Ravens fan basically is freaking out, breaking something. I'm not sure what, but it definitely looks expensive. And they're basically having a temper tantrum on the video.
Blowing double-digit leads will do that to you. Anyways, we'll move on to the Dolphins game. This one was over at halftime. 30-15 was the final, but it was 30-0 at halftime. They benched their starters midway through the third. Put in backup players throughout the lineup. The Texans got a couple touchdowns that were meaningless in this game late to make the score look better, but 30-15, the Dolphins looked like the best team on the week for the 30 minutes that they actually played. They were scoring a point a minute on average. That's a very good number. I know it's the Texans, but still, it's an NFL team that
like
looked clearly outmatched.
That like when you put an asterisk over the game, it's the Texans.
Yeah, Tua had a monster day. Tyreek had a good day. Jalen Waddle had a good day. Jeff Wilson had a good day, and they only played about 2.5 quarters. So, as far as the Texans go, Dameon Pierce, another bad week. This one, when you're getting blown out, it's going to happen. We'll see if they can keep up with Cleveland this week. I think that's going to be a very interesting game for several reasons. But the Texans are real bad. 1-9-1, look like they've got the number 1 overall pick on lock at this point. And that means we'll hopefully have a good quarterback there in the future.
Yes, it was definitely a good day for Tua and the Fish, and the absolutely blowout lead was good in reality, but sometimes that's bad in fantasy when your starters actually don't participate because the backups are in. So that definitely affected Wilson and Hill, who had good days, but they could have been potentially a little bit better if they'd played all 4 quarters. And what a difference different coaches make for Tua, as of course you had, as I mentioned, Brian Flores last year, just absolutely really getting to Tua's psyche. And this year, all of a sudden, you see the different relationship with Mike McDaniel that has with the quarterback. And all of a sudden, he has morphed into a serious contender, maybe for the conference championship, maybe beyond, who knows. But for the flip side, Pierce has had a very disappointing 4 weeks. If you have any shares of Dameon Pierce, you're probably scratching your head quite a lot, and you just wonder, how bad are the Texans, Mr. Ryan? Yeah, how about this? Dolphins QB Tua Tagovailoa had more passing yards, 299, than the Texans had total net yards of offense, 210. That's bad. And the bringing up the difference between coaches, between head coach Bolas and head coach McDaniels, you had, of course, the clock kerfuffle with the Bucks. But at the end of this game, you're having the sequence where McDaniels is going clock, 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 clock about 50 gajillion times, and then they spike the ball, and he's like, nice. And
Yeah.
just what a complete difference between coaches. And then just hashtag bring back Bruce. Good boy.
Yeah. Mike McDaniels has been exactly what this team needed. I know with all the controversy around the Brian Flores firing and all the stories that came out, he was a good coach for the Dolphins, but this is a different fit. This is a different guy, and it's been a really good fit for the Dolphins. Moving on to the Jets playing the Bears without Justin Fields, and that went about as well as you would expect. Jets win 31-10. Mike White was sensational. 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards passing. Garrett Wilson has been great in games not started by Zach Wilson. Michael Carter left this game with a low ankle sprain. He is expected to be out this week. I think he's listed as doubtful as of today for this coming week. But Zonovan Bam Knight, yes, his first name is Zonovan and his nickname is Bam. Very good in relief, which doesn't help anybody for fantasy last week. But
almost sounds like a character from a Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah, it does.
I wonder what class they would be.
They would have to be a ranger, I think. I think so. Anyways, as we step away from nerd culture, and back to football, the Jets go to 7-4. They looked much better than the Bears. The Bears were tempted to almost start Nathan Peterman, which that's not what you want to do. They didn't. They ended up playing.
Would that be the football equivalent of crossing the streams or combining matter and antimatter, destroying everything?
I think it's the same thing as playing Frogger, taking 2 jumps into the road and then dropping the controller on the ground, just getting smashed.
And you now have the Frogger theme going through your mind.
Yeah. Trevor Siemian is out for the season now after an oblique injury, but Justin Fields will be back next week against the Packers. So hopefully for the Bears, they can get a win over the team that owns them. But only time will tell. The Jets move to 7-4. They right now hold on to that 7 seed. They're going to have to hold on real tight because there's a lot of teams charging behind them.
Yes, Chicago just wants Justin Fields back at this point. Pretty pleases. It's pretty bad when your backup gets injured in warmups and now is gone for the season. And then you look and see who the third stringer is, and you're like sort of Mr. T from Rocky. Prediction, pain. Yeah, so Jets basically got a freebie. Good luck, though, Jets, against the Vikings, Bills, and Lions. That should be fun. And Bears have Packers, bye, and then Eagles. Definitely spicy and interesting. But Jets basically got a freebie thanks to who started.
Yeah, we'll find out about the Jets going forward. Of course, the Bills, and they play the Bills next week. I thought it was the week. Oh no, Minnesota this week, the Bills after, and then a surging Detroit team. We'll know about the Jets by then, for sure. All right. Next up, the Bengals 20-16 win over the Tennessee Titans. A very close, low-scoring game, reminiscent of the playoff matchup last year. Cincinnati does get the win. Both teams exit this one at 6-4. The Titans, of course, still leading the AFC South. 3 games up on Jacksonville, 2.5 with the sweep over the Colts, who have a bye week next week in Week 14. The Bengals, though, again, pulled even with the Ravens. They have a game with them coming up here in the next few weeks. So that division, it's going to come down to Cleveland or Cincinnati and Baltimore. But I really have to be honest. I don't see Baltimore winning that division with how they're blowing leads. Cincinnati is beating good teams again. So sounds like Jamar Chase coming back next week. This week. Joe Mixon still in concussion protocol, but has a shot to play on Sunday, so they're even getting healthy at the right time. Tough week for Derrick Henry. No touchdowns. Did have the 1 long screen pass that he fumbled at the 2, but he still got the job done for you.
Yes, Cincinnati figured out how to win without Chase and Mixon. While the Titans stumbled a bit, Cincinnati beat Tennessee at their own game. Henry's fantasy effectiveness was basically halved from last week and definitely raised a few eyebrows with managers. Higgins has had back-to-back great weeks after the bye. Bit of a letdown after Tennessee beat Green Bay in Thursday Night Football last week, but you can't win them all, and Cincinnati is looking pretty legit.
Yeah, Cincinnati again coming on strong. That division is going to come right down to the last week of the season. I believe they actually play week 18, so that could be the determining factor in that division. Moving on, the Washington Commanders. I feel bad calling them anything like turds now because they're playing so much better. 7-5 after a 19-13 win over the Atlanta Falcons, a goal line interception stand late in that game, sealing it. The Falcons fall to 5-7, still well in contention to win the NFC South because, well, it's the NFC South, and the Saints and the Panthers have a shot to win that division too. Still, Brian Robinson, a great game. If you have a fantasy running back going up against Atlanta, you probably want them in your lineup. But yeah, this is really a testament to how good Washington has been the last few weeks with Taylor Heinicke at quarterback. Doesn't look like Carson Wentz has any shot of getting his job back anytime soon. But the Falcons,
which is probably a blessing.
Yeah, the Falcons. I think the Falcons would be better suited to lose out, get a higher draft pick, and go get the quarterback they need. But it looks like they're going to have a shot to win this division, and you're not going to see a change. You're not going to find out what's going on with Desmond Ridder as long as they have a shot to make the playoffs still.
The Commanders continue to defy the odds. Atlanta's loss, ironically, keeps Tampa in first place in the NFC South. By Ron Rivera is doing an amazing job with this team. As why you can't call them the turds anymore. How about this fun fact? The Commanders 7-5 are the fifth team since 2010 to have at least 7 wins in the first 12 games of a season after starting 1-4 since week 5. They have had multiple 3-game win streaks, a feat they haven't accomplished since 2005. They're legit.
Yeah, they're legit. The schedule hasn't been as difficult, but still, you win the games that are on the schedule, and Taylor Heinicke has his team playing well. Washington, I mean, if you just said before the season, hey, Commanders, Washington fans, you're going to be better than the Packers, you're going to be better than the Rams, you're going to be better than the Saints, you're going to be better than the Broncos, the Colts, the Patriots, the Chargers, you'd sign up for that in a heartbeat. I know a lot of those teams have been very disappointing, but hey, 7-5. Right now, holding that 7th seed, and it's just going to be holding off the Seattle Seahawks. We're maybe jumping ahead of the Giants or jumping maybe even ahead of the Cowboys if they can keep this up. But the Commanders really have been impressive the last few weeks, and Taylor Heinicke has locked down that starting job, and for good reason. He's just been very, very good. Next up, the Chargers 25-24 win over the Arizona Cardinals on a last-second 2-point conversion. That's some brass ones right there going for it there. Arizona, very good game from out of Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, as if we expect anything less at this point. James Conner, very, very good. Justin Herbert starting to look like himself again, which for fantasy people, if you've drafted and held Justin Herbert all this time, you're finally starting to see what you were expecting. And eventually get Mike Williams back. This will be a full strength offense. It's not quite there yet, but getting Keenan Allen back, getting Austin Eckler back involved in that passing game as not the primary option has been very good for the Chargers. 6-5. They're not going to win the AFC West, but 6-5. Game behind the Jets. Game, behind the Bengals and the Ravens, who are battling for that division and that wild card spot. So still in contention, a lot of time left to go. They did get flexed in week 14 with Miami to the Sunday night game. And I think that's going to be another telling one for the Chargers. They do well against the Chiefs, but Dolphins are another high-end team in the AFC right now. We'll see if the Chargers can hold on. As far as the Cardinals go, I know a lot of Cardinals fans want Cliff Kingsbury gone. We'll see if that happens in the offseason. Kyler Murray has not won a game since the Call of Duty release. I'm not saying that's the cause. I'm just pointing out a fact.
Did you see the little tiff social media tiff he got into with the Viking? I'm walking on his name, but they were going back and forth at it.
He'll be all right. But yeah, Cardinals 4-8. They are not going to the playoffs, and that's really all I can say about the Cardinals. They have some fantasy outsets that are good. They're on bye this week, so if you have your Kyler Murray, you have Hollywood Brown. You have Hollywood Brown came back, not a terrible game. DeAndre Hopkins, James Conner, we're going to want to bench those players.
Yeah, to say that Justin Herbert needed that win was an understatement to the max head. After brutal back-to-back primetime appearances against the 49ers and then the Chiefs, they really needed that W big time. The Chargers better not look past the Raiders, who just beat the crappy Broncos and surprisingly good Seahawks, as Josh Jacobs has suddenly become certifiably dangerous. And yeah, you definitely have that quote. This was from PFF. Kyler Murray on that 4th and 1 INT. Schematically, were kind of expletives. So yeah, that sort of tells you about how the ending of that game went.
Yeah. Like I said, I think Cliff Kingsbury needs to be fired as well. I know a lot of Cardinals fans would agree with that. I think that's the biggest concern. We'll see if that happens in the offseason. All right, we'll go to the game of the day. It was the Raiders and Seahawks game you had just mentioned. Biggest game of the season for fantasy from Josh Jacobs by far, 300 total yards and several touchdowns. They beat the Seahawks 40-34 in the second consecutive week with a walk-off touchdown. This one, an 86-yard run by Josh Jacobs on a bad calf that he'd injured previously. Got most of the way through the game. It flared back up. He was questionable. And no, he didn't look questionable at all. We'll see if he can play this week. I think he's on track to go as of right now. But only time will tell. This drops the Seahawks to 6-5 and currently outside looking into the playoff picture. Devontae Adams had a very good week as well. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett were solid. Little bit of a struggle for Walker, but he did have 2 touchdowns, salvage the fantasy day, but the yardage is not what you were hoping for there. And the Raiders, they're not going to be a playoff team. They're not, but they could make a rally here. They can make a run late to at least have a respectable season and maybe clear the Broncos because they're going to finish ahead, but maybe get, look, you guys really suck down there in the standings. Get a few games ahead of them.
Yeah, so maybe they are win city as Raiders elected to not exercise Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option.
That's going to cost him.
He might be getting the Brinks truck backed up, beep, 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 for him for 23. Best game of the season for the Raiders thus far, even better than the Pats and the Dolphins win. Is you have to wonder, is this when they start to turn things around a little bit?
Yeah, they got a couple more weeks of not the most difficult of matchups going forward as they play the Chargers next week, a big divisional game. They knocked the Chargers off. All of a sudden, the Raiders are, only a game behind the Chargers, and the Chargers are looking bad for the playoffs. But the Raiders have shown something the last few weeks, a lot of fight, and maybe they're buying into Josh McDaniels' system. That does have to come into play here. They got to get used to a new system. It takes some time. Maybe they're figuring it out now. Yeah. All right, moving on to the Chiefs. Just absolute beatdown of the Rams, 26-10. The final score doesn't say how lopsided this game was. This game was never in doubt. The Chiefs stopped passing the ball because they didn't need to. Bryce Perkins could not get the ball going anywhere. Surprised that the Rams got 10 points. The Chiefs were one of the streaming options for defenses last week. I know I picked them up and had a good week with them. But the Rams really struggling. No Matt Stafford this week, but it could be John Wolford again. But they said you might see some Bryce Perkins going back to the, hey, 2 quarterbacks are better than 1, right? No. Allen Robinson out for the season. Cooper Kupp probably out for the season at this point. Aaron Donald left with an ankle injury. This Rams team is done. But it's tough. The Chiefs still reign supreme in the AFC, the number 1 seed right now at 9-2, half a game in front of Buffalo as of right now, and a full game in front of Miami. Really nothing you can say about the Chiefs other than Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes, really, really good.
Yeah, this game I just had, I didn't have a lot of stuff written on it as the Rams are just garbage. KC, meanwhile, can seemingly plug anyone in any position, and they just go crazy. Okay, boom, pick them up for fantasy. Hey, they can help win your week. So, yeah, just Kansas City Chiefs are really clicking, and Rams are just going in the opposite direction. So, hope they enjoyed the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to even sniff the playoffs this year.
Yeah, but when you get a Super Bowl win, you get a Super Bowl win. Kansas City playing Cincinnati this week coming up. That's a big game we'll cover here in a little bit. All right, next up,
Yeah.
the Saints are bad. San Francisco 13-0 win over the Saints.
Are they the Aints again?
I think they are. My friend who's a Saints fan said Dennis Allen needs to be shot. I think being fired is good, but that tells you where Saints fans are. They say the play calling is terrible, and they're just not getting the job done. The Niners do get a win, albeit not in convincing fashion. Deebo Samuel with another injury popping up. He's going to be questionable this week against Miami. But Alvin Kamara, 2 very costly fumbles, including one inside the 1-yard line. The Saints had opportunities to win this game. They went for it on 4th and short inside field goal range more than once, and it just didn't work out. The Niners, 7-4. They are now solo first place in the NFC West. The Saints are only a game and a half behind Tampa Bay.
NFC going south.
The NFC South. They're a game and a half behind Tampa Bay and play them on Monday night. So still lots to play for the New Orleans Saints. Somehow still in contention.
NFC South is going to come down literally to the last week.
And it's not going to be a good thing.
It might turn out you might have the Carolina Panthers winning the bleeping division. Good God.
Yeah, it's not great. Anyway, Christian McCaffrey did have some knee inflammation this week, but he should be good to go for Sunday. All right, next up, we go to the nightcap. The Eagles 40-33 win over the Green Bay Packers. It looked a couple times like Philly was going to run away with it, and then the Packers clawed their way back. The Packers looked a lot better this week than they have, at least offensively, in a while. Aaron Rodgers left the game with an oblique injury, did not return, expected to play this week against the Bears, but Jordan Love came in and looked competent. Jalen Hurts looked good. Miles Sanders had one of his better games of the year, just all around. Again, this is another one where you got what you needed fantasy-wise if you played any of these guys.
As Hurts had a monster game, nice season debut for Love. And same back and forth game. I think this is probably one of the best games of Week 12, if not the best game, as Rodgers says he will play Week 15. I'm not sure if that is a good thing or not. And fun fact, as you mentioned that the Eagles, led by Jalen Hurts, 157 rushing yards, and Miles Sanders, 143. The Eagles rushed for 363 yards against the Packers Sunday night, the 8th most in a single game by any team in the Super Bowl era, and 2nd most since 2007. Hurts 157, now ranks as the 5th most by a quarterback in the Super Bowl era. He has become a monster quarterback in reality, and especially you have him fancy. You're like that guy behind the tree going,
give me my points. Yeah, Jalen Hurts is a cheat code, and if you have him, you're very, very happy about it. Packers 4-8. Their season's coming to a rapid end. Not necessarily what you expected, but with all the wide receiver changes and lack of talent, some of the injuries, David Bakhtiari now out again, this time with an appendectomy, I believe it was, or something crazy like that. Not a huge surprise. The Eagles look like they have pretty much nothing staying in the way, short of a collapse of getting the number 1 seed in the NFC. And the road going through Philadelphia is not great for the rest of the conference. All right, then we go to Monday Night Football. For some reason, it was Pittsburgh and Indianapolis, but a pretty competitive game throughout. I had to do the Monday Night Football sweats.
Not the first half.
No, I was in a weird position where I needed Jonathan Taylor to do Jonathan Taylor things. He did that, no problem. But I needed Michael Pittman to not get more than 16 or so half PPR points. He ended up with like 15.9. So doing the Monday Night Sweats to survive my undefeated week. Najee Harris left this game with an abdomen injury. It sounds like he's going to be good to go this week. Keep an eye on that. That's going to be a big one. The Colts, though, that offense just it needs to go through Jonathan Taylor. It just needs to go through Jonathan Taylor. It needs to be like the Tennessee Titans offense. Jonathan Taylor, like Derrick Henry. Where are we at on 3rd down? Do we have to pass, or we can just give it back to this guy? That's what's going to be successful for the Colts. The defense is decent. That offensive line looks like it's getting better, but this passing game is not going crazy. Jelani Woods, more catches in this game than he had the rest of the season combined, which was a very good day for him, especially if you were in a tight end premium league. Oh boy, oh boy. But the Colts lose this one. The Steelers win. Both teams with 4 wins, 7 losses. The Colts with that tie also have a bye week coming up next week in week 14. Steelers, though, looking a little bit better every week, I think.
Yeah, it's just absolutely, I think, overall a yuck game for Indy. Just 3 minutes of possession. First half, I know I listened to it, and then I think I ended up sacking out and giving up, and then I missed the best part of the game. But I wasn't surprised to find out the next morning that Pittsburgh had won. Indy came alive the second half, reverting to their early season selves as Pittsburgh was just dominant on D because you had the first field goal that was made, and then they lined up for the second field goal, and Pittsburgh D was like, no bits blocked, and
Yeah.
so they
It
had
was
a
almost a 60-yarder,
better.
too.
They almost had a better second half, but if India had just scored some field goals, done something in the first half, they might have been able to pull off an upset, but their offense was just overall god awful.
Yeah, not great. So before we go into picks, let's go over the injuries. Quickly, some of the in-outs that have come out today. Out for Sunday, Kadarius Toney, Mike Williams, Elijah Mitchell, Aaron Donald, Matt Stafford for the Rams. David Njoku out for the Browns with that great touchdown catch on 4th down to send that game to overtime last week. Brandon Cooks out. Derek Stingley Jr., the cornerback for the Texans, who's been very good. That's going to be interesting with, of course, somebody coming back to face his former team. That's going to be a big one there. Let's see. Players who are going to play. Do I have that list yet? No. Deebo Samuel's questionable. Christian McCaffrey expected to play. Going off of the list that Joel put together earlier, Jamar Chase on track to play. Joe Mixon still in the protocol with a shot to go. Michael Carter is doubtful with that low ankle sprain he picked up on Sunday. Najee Harris, like I said, looks like he's going to be good to go. Jalen Warren, who had the hamstring injury, sounds like he's going to be good to go. So maybe Pittsburgh getting healthy in the backfield. Josh Jacobs with that sprained calf, he got in the 4th quarter and then ran the long touchdown on it. Keep an eye. I think he's going to play, but keep an eye on that. Elijah Mitchell for the Niners, he's done. He's done for the season. He might come back in the playoffs, but for fantasy reasons, he is absolutely done. Christian McCaffrey nursing some knee tenders, but has been in practice. No designation. Should be good to go.
And can I have a sports shuffle audible since I know we're saving our final thoughts for after the next segment?
Yes.
If you sort of wonder how historically bad that the Broncos are, they peak points per game 14.3, worst since 1966. Offensive touchdowns 14, worst since 1971. Passing touchdowns 8, 1990. That is pretty bleeping bad, and one just has to wonder when you have the Broncos who are flexed from Week 14 Sunday Night Football game. Not even Pat Mahomes can save your appearance. The NFL has just realized these guys suck. We need to flex them, even if it's to the 4 o'clock window. It's the same Nathaniel Hackett that was for the Denver Las Vegas game. Somebody has to win this game. Why did you say, well, we have a shot at winning this game? So, yeah, just one has to. I never root for anyone to lose their job, but what does it take to get this guy's countdown clock started? This team is just god awful.
A couple things. The flexing to Herbert versus Tua has better storylines than Denver, Kansas City as it is. But yeah, Denver's atrocious. Also, flex scheduling coming to Monday Night Football next year, it sounds like. So maybe we won't have a Colts Steelers 4-7, 3-8 battle next year, which would be great.
And I have a fun non-football final thought for is that definitely falls into Stephen Urkel. Did they do that instead of did I do that? It's pretty like you're going, someone really did that?
Yeah. Leonard Fournette, we'll go back to the injuries. Missed last week, not guaranteed to return yet in week number 13, but I believe he's at least getting close. Jeff Wilson should be good to go. Rashad White's been much better. Jeff Wilson left the game with cramps, should be good to go. Raheem Mostert should be coming back from last week's injury. Jamar Chase sounds like he's going to at least be good to go. He is officially questionable going into Sunday. Lamar Jackson, no injury designation after the quad injury popped up. He's going to be good to go as well. Again, no Michael Carter expected. He is officially doubtful.
You can tell that there was no real concern over Lamar Jackson's starting condition because the line really didn't suddenly shift. Like it just sort of it fluctuated a little bit, but it just kind of stayed steady.
Yeah, Justin Fields and Aaron Rodgers will be playing on Sunday, so that they're playing each other. That's going to be a good game for two not really good teams. KJ Hamler with another setback. He's likely done for the next few weeks, and he's been pretty irrelevant as well. Again, Jalen Warren back at practice. It sounds like him and Najee Harris will be good to go. Michael Gallup has been dealing with some illness injuries, but he should be good for the weekend. Kadarius Toney out this week. David Njoku also out this week. And I think that is the big stuff on here that we haven't already covered. Yeah. So that's the big injury news going into week number 13. All right. So even though we're already 50 minutes in, we're going to go through picks kind of quick. Again, last night, Buffalo did win that game 24-10. We'll get to a full recap on the next episode after the week is concluded. I had Buffalo. Joel had New England. So I'm off to a 1-0 start where Joel is on 1. That being said, Joel has a 7-game lead on me going into that game. So now it's down to 6. So, oh darn, he's only up by 6 games now.
I take it we're in hurry up offense mode.
A little bit. I mean, we're still going to break it down. We're still going to go through it, but we're going to try and keep the fluff out of it. So let's go to the first game, Pittsburgh at Atlanta. Najee Harris, if he plays, again, I said if you play your running back against Atlanta, you'll be happy. So if he plays, play Najee. If it's no Najee, play Jalen Warren. If they're both out, Benny Snell. If they're all out, then McFarland. But let's hope we don't go that far down. Deontay Johnson has a shot of having a good week, as well as George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth, but this is not a great passing offense, so tread lightly. For Atlanta, the wide receivers actually do well against Pittsburgh, so maybe Drake London in a deep dive kind of situation, and maybe they get Cordero Patterson involved. Kyle Pitts is officially done for the season, so maybe Cordero Patterson will finally get something going. This game in Atlanta, both teams very bad. Atlanta, though, still has a lot to play for. Who gets the win?
Yes, Deontay has the most targets without scoring a touchdown this season, fun fact. But that being said, I tend to think Pittsburgh's D is better than Atlanta's D. It's practically non-existent at times, so I'm going Pittsburgh.
I'm going to take Atlanta. I just think that, frankly, they have a lot more to play for, and they've been a pretty solid competitive team. They haven't blown the leads like they have in the past, and I just think Atlanta's going to get this game done. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game than you might expect with Pittsburgh involved, but I'm going to take Atlanta to keep the pressure on Tampa Bay in that division at 6-7 after this week.
I think we're both going to agree on the next game.
Yeah, I have a hunch. Denver at Baltimore, even though we saw Baltimore fall to Jacksonville, we don't want to go too far ahead. For Denver, maybe Cortland Sutton. That's about it. There's not much here fantasy-wise you want to be playing with. Denver's got a very good defense, though, so this might not be the best fantasy game, but Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews going to be in your lineup. Outside of that, tread lightly. There's going to be some options, but this might not be their best week. I mean, they shut down some good players.
Do you want to know how bad Russell Wilson is? This is from
Jeff. How bad is he?
How bad? From Jeff Bell on Twitter. Russell Wilson was QB 33 in Week 12. There are 32 teams in the NFL.
Yeah, he finished behind
Jordan Love. Yeah, that are bad.
He's not good. He's just not good. And I don't know what it is, but he's not good. So, anyways, Baltimore, a lot to play for. Denver, not so much. Who you got?
Oh, yeah, you're definitely going Baltimore. You can't have a lot of confidence in Denver, although you would have to imagine what it would be like after this week. What happened if Baltimore loses to Denver next week? Good Lord. But yeah, I can't pick Denver. I'm sorry. I just can't.
Yeah, you can. I'm taking I'm taking Baltimore as well
And,
because
any sane person picks Baltimore.
I don't know if I take Denver over Houston right now. All right, we move forward. Green Bay at Chicago. Fantasy wise, I think there's a lot of options here. Christian Watson is going to be in lineups. Aaron Jones is going to be in lineups. AJ Dillon could be a flex consideration. Lazard, Cobb looked pretty good in the last few weeks. They might get Romeo Dubs back here soon. Robert Tonyan, and then of course Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is actually a sneaky good play this week against the team he owns. Justin Fields, if he plays, he's in your lineup. He has been too dynamic. There's not many players you're going to play over Justin Fields that are, Allen and Mahomes is about it. Maybe you can make the case for Herbert or Lamar Jackson or something like that, but it's a very short list. David Montgomery is going to be in your lineup as well, and then the pass catchers, I think you kind of punt. This is a running first, second, third, fourth option running team.
Like Forrest Gump, I was running
and yeah. Anyways, this is a game for the basement of the NFC North between the two winningest franchises in league history. Who you got?
Yeah, it's kind of you would normally kind of lean toward Chicago, but Aaron Rodgers is 22-7 ATS and 24-5 straight up versus the Bears, and he has won and covered his last 7 meetings versus Chicago. That from the Action Network. So, yeah, I wouldn't call this a great amount of confidence, especially with how Aaron Rodgers has done in recent days, but I'm going Green Bay.
I believe the quote is, "I own you. I still own you," from Aaron Rodgers, and I think that carries into Sunday as well. All right, next up, this one could be the most entertaining game of the week. Jacksonville at Detroit, two of the worst defenses against the passing game and in general in the league, and two suddenly decent offenses. So I think if you've got them for either team here, you want to consider lighting them up. ETN had a disappointing week because he left early. He should be good to go. He's going to be in your lineup. I'm actually streaming with Kyler Murray out. I'm streaming Trevor Lawrence in this matchup as my quarterback. It could have gotten Deshaun Watson. I actually dropped Deshaun Watson for him because I think Houston's going to we'll get to that game next. Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, they're all going to be in your lineup. You can even look at Marvin Jones in this one. For Detroit, Jamal Williams is leading the league in touchdowns, so he's got to be in your lineup. He just keeps scoring. DeAndre Swift making a comeback. Jared Goff is a streaming option. And then you got Amon-Ra St. Brown on the outside, who has just been very, very good all season long. All of those, at the very minimum, have to be considered if you have them on your roster. This is two teams with 4 wins. As I said, if Jacksonville wins this game and Tennessee loses, they control their own destiny the rest of the way, but they have to get by Detroit first, so who gets it done?
Yeah, because when you're looking at St. Brown, you have to think about he's coming off a 9-catch, 122-yard, and touchdown game, and this was against an elite Bills D. Detroit's defense is tough, but it's not in the same pedigree as the Bills D. So you have all those players you mentioned coming back, and I know you have Etienne, but you're comparing St. Brown to maybe Zay Jones on the flip side of the coin. I think I have to lean in the favor of the Detroit Lions, who, even in some of the losses recently, they have been looking very, very competitive and very good. Dan Campbell's doing a hell of a job there, so got to go with Detroit.
I think Jacksonville keeps their hopes of having control of the destiny in their hands. I said I'm playing Trevor Lawrence as a streaming option over Detroit and some others. So I think this is going to be a very, very high-scoring game. This is going to be one that comes down to the last possession. Probably both teams scoring in the 30s, but I think Jacksonville just gets a little bit better this week than they were last week, and they're stepping down in competition. So I think it's going to be a very entertaining game, and I think Jacksonville gets it done. And we move on to the game I'm looking forord to most all week.
I've been looking forward to this game. Like you need to have Michael Buffer get rid of the start, and before the game goes, let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah, I'm waiting. I don't want to watch this game. I don't think the game's going to be worth watching, but I want to see the entrances. I want to see the pregame. I want to hear the chants from the fans as Cleveland and Deshaun Watson coming to Houston to play the Texans. First game back. Tony Busby, the defendant in all the rape claim cases and all of that. there are going to be accusers in a private box at the game because, well, he never had to face his accusers in court, so now he's going to face him in his luxury box at the stadium because that's where we're at nowadays, kids. Oh boy, for fantasy though, you're going to play Nick Chubb, who's been very good this year and is playing a terrible defense. You are probably going to play Amari Cooper.
Do you trust Dameon Pierce?
Yes, I do, because Cleveland is also very bad against the run. This is an opportunity for Dameon Pierce to get right. So I think the running backs you can play on both sides. Dameon Pierce, riskier, but still very good. Again, Amari Cooper is going to be in your lineup. He's been bad on the road, so hopefully he doesn't do too bad. Brandon Cooks is out for the Texans, so you might see some like Jordan Akins. You might see some Nico Collins. You might see someone who's not as well known, not as well established, having a pretty good week. I don't think you want to rush and play Deshaun Watson unless you have to this week. See how he performs. Houston is also very, very good against the fantasy quarterbacks in general because they fall behind and don't have the ability to come back, and you start running the ball. So if he doesn't get it done early, he's not going to get it done. So maybe pump the brakes, see how he looks. He hasn't played in 2 years. We said when it was Le'Veon Bell, hey, you haven't played in 2 years. Taking an NFL hit, timing and all of that is a legitimate skill in the NFL. You have to be on it. Being gone for so long, we'll see how he is. If there's a game Houston's going to come out 100% focused, 100% fired up, and wanting to win for reasons not just I want to win this football game. This is it. But you have that motivation for Deshaun Watson on the other side. I can't wait to see the entrance of this game. It's going to be WWE style hate. It's going to be fantastic in that way. But can Houston get the win?
Yeah, you have so much hype around the Browns because of Watson. I just tend to feel like they're due for a letdown because you had the Browns shock Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. They dropped the next 2 games to the Dolphins and Bills. Granted, they were good teams, but
Solid
still.
teams, though.
And after the Texans, a rematch with the Bengals loom with a possible return of Mixon and Chase. Burrow wants to avenge that M&F stunner, so the Browns could be headed for a bit of a rocky start to the Watson era. And I just tend to think the number one question is how much rust does Watson have? And as you said, Houston is going to be super mega level 9,000 focused to win this game and possibly could pick up their second win of the year. And I know it's an absolutely crazy pick, but I think I'm going to pick the Houston Texans to get their second win of the year and absolutely shock the heck out of the Cleveland Browns. And yeah, so Watson's going to get a bit of a wake-up call.
I was tempted to do this and take Houston, but I am going to take Cleveland. I know the NFL world in general and most human beings who know what Deshaun Watson was accused of at the very least, they're going to be rooting for Houston in this game. I want to experience the hate that Houston has for this man. I want to see it, but I do think at the end of the day, Nick Chubb has a monster game. Houston is atrocious against the run. We've seen what Derrick Henry has done against him. We've seen what Miles Sanders did against him. We've seen what, all of these teams have done against them in the most part, where the running back just goes absolutely insane. They've got one of the best in Nick Chubb. So I think they're going to run the ball a lot. I think they're going to control the clock. They're going to try and control the crowd. They're going to keep Deshaun Watson safe, make sure he has only the throws he needs to make. But I think Cleveland does get the job done. Houston is a very bad team, but I think for sure rooting for Houston, but I just don't see it happening. All right, next up, New York Jets go to Minnesota to face the Minnesota Vikings. The Jets, Mike White was very good last week. He's at least a streamable option this week. Zonovan Knight, he's interesting. I don't know if you want to play him, but he's interesting as the possible lead back there. James Robinson was a healthy scratch last week, and they told him 5 days beforehand, you're not playing. So maybe he's on the outs with that coaching staff. I don't know. Garrett Wilson in your lineup as well. For the Vikings, Dalvin Cook going to be in your lineup. Justin Jefferson never needs to leave. T.J. Hawkinson never needs to leave at this point, your lineup. Adam Thielen had a great game last week. We'll see if he can repeat, but I don't know if he's anything better than a flex consideration or played in deep leagues. Kirk
You
Cousins
saw
might be interesting as well.
you saw the bump he gave Belichick on the way out.
Yeah, I did. Um, this is a game between two playoff hopeful teams. I think Minnesota's going to get it on the division alone. The Jets have a lot more to lose with a loss here. So who gets it done?
Yeah, in 4 games without Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson is averaging 10 targets, and his expected fantasy points with Wilson was 6.3 compared to 17.5 with anyone else. So, yeah, I know Minnesota has some weapons like Thielen, like Cook, but I just think that the New Jersey Jets have changed course. They've shifted quarterbacks. They've said, okay, you're really not producing. Put in White, took Wilson and had him sort of go to the corner, and it's worked wonders for them. And Minnesota, I know Kirk Cousins is better in the 1 o'clock hour than he is in prime time. And kind of just had a prime time win, huge game. But you can always have a little bit of a letdown, and the Jets are sort of turning the corner. And I think the Jets steal one away from Minnesota here.
A lot of disagreement so far this week. I'm going to take Minnesota here. I remember Mike White had a massive game last week and a huge upset against Cincinnati, and then came out and was an absolute dud the next week. He is not a consistent quarterback as far as we've seen. He's had his moments. Chicago's a terrible team. Their defense is not as good as Minnesota's. Their offense is not as good as Minnesota without Justin Fields. So they're going to be stepping up in competition. Minnesota responded to that embarrassing loss against Dallas by beating New England. I think they're going to come out and try and get it done again. This is a chance to sweep the AFC East, which again, everybody's at or above 500. So Minnesota, they still have hopes for that 1 seed. They can clinch the division. That's a big motivating factor as well. And I just kind of think Mike White's going to be a little bit worse than we saw last week, and it's going to be enough for the Vikings to get the win.
So you said there's a lot of disagreement this week. So does this mean I need to do a Skip Bayless and slap my hand down on the desk and start yelling at you?
No, we're only 7 games in. We've already got 5 different picks. So that's not bad. Usually we have like 2 or 3. We're already at 5 through 7 games, and we've got some other games that are not straightforward.
Usually we're like, yeah, I agree on that. Yeah, I agree on that.
I mean, we might disagree on 3 of the next 4 or 4 of the next 5, maybe even more. Next up is Washington at the New York Giants. Giants look like they're going in reverse, but Washington is pedal to the metal going forward. So 2 teams going opposite directions for fantasy. I expect this to be a very low scoring game, so tread lightly. Maybe Brian Robinson, maybe Terry McLaurin. Probably going to have to play Saquon Barkley, but outside of that, there's not a lot here for fantasy unless this game explodes, and I just don't see that happening. So big game. Washington can move in front of the Giants with a win. The Giants can put Washington a little bit further in the rearview mirror if they can get the job done. Big game for both. Who gets this W?
All right, an official reduce the fluff mode. Right when Antonio Gibson was looking good, Brian Robinson showed up. Brian Robinson, of course, had a breakout game while out touching Gibson. And then meanwhile, you have Curtis Samuel, who's struggling since Taylor Heineke took over. Now, that being said, you mentioned the Giants are going in reverse. I definitely agree with that assessment. They really seem to be out of sync on Turkey Day. And yeah, I know it's weird going for the Commanders, but I think they can go in the Big Apple, take a bite out of it, and come away with a win.
I agree here. I think Washington's found something with Taylor Heineke. They found belief. Their defense is improving. Chase Young's coming back. And I just think Washington's starting to roll in the right direction. And maybe I think Washington's going to be a playoff team in the wild card one way or the other. And I think they start that journey by beating the Giants and moving ahead of them. All right, next up is one of the several marquee matchups of this week. Tennessee at Philadelphia. Philadelphia 10-1. Obviously, right now, the number 1 team in the NFL record-wise. Has shown some weaknesses against the run. Who comes to town? It's Derrick Henry. So for fantasy, Derrick Henry is an automatic lock start every week, but this could be a very good matchup for him. Treylon Burks is interesting as a flex consideration. Maybe not somebody you want to go with, but I don't think you want to play Tannehill unless it's a super flex. And that's probably it for Tennessee, is really Derrick Henry. For Philadelphia, I think Miles Sanders is a risky but solid play when they give him the opportunity. He has come through all season long. They just, for some reason, go away from him at times. Jalen Hurts, of course, in your lineup. A.J. Brown, revenge game in your lineup as well.
Question: who is the tight end that you go for Philadelphia for fantasy?
I don't think you
purposes?
take any of them. Honestly, right now, there's Grant Calcaterra or whatever his name is, and I have him on a dynasty lineup in a taxi squad, and I don't even know his name. But I don't think you waste your time with the Philadelphia tight ends. I mean, they're going to find a way to get it done outside of that. They have Quez Watkins, who's been stepping up. They still have Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith is questionable, so keep an eye on that. He could be an interesting play as well. Tennessee's weak on the back end. Tennessee, they keep games close, and they tend to snake bite good teams at times. Philadelphia has really struggled against the run. Obviously, Derrick Henry coming to town is one of the best. So who gets this win in a very important game for both?
Philadelphia. Derrick Henry is a certifiable weapon when it comes to the ground game from the NFL, but Philadelphia is definitely the better unit, I tend to think. So not taking anything away from Tennessee, but they definitely stumbled a little bit last week. Philadelphia, of course, stumbled against the Commanders, but I think Philadelphia takes it here because Derrick Henry is, of course, a certifiable weapon, but he's also very predictable. It's like, oh, I think they're going to give it to Henry again. Meanwhile, Philadelphia has a few more choices, so tend to lean the way of the home team in this one. As Miles Sanders as well as Jalen Hurts. So got to go with Philadelphia. I'm not taking anything away from King Henry, but Philadelphia has the better overall unit.
I'm taking the Titans. When Philadelphia was undefeated for the longest time and I was looking at their schedule, this was the game I thought they would lose that undefeated season on because they struggled against the run. And Tennessee can pound Derrick Henry. You might know it's coming and can't stop it. They've also started getting him in the screen game, which has led to some very big receptions. I think they're going to get that game going even more in the future. Philadelphia, this is one of the toughest teams they faced all season. They haven't looked great the last few weeks. They struggled with Green Bay. They struggled with Indianapolis. They lost to Washington, who is now resurgent, but they struggled against Houston a few weeks back on Thursday night in the first half. Dameon Pierce let them up. So I think Tennessee is going to get the win here. This is a game I thought was going to break their undefeated record from, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. And I'm going to stick with that thought there. So that's 6 of 9 so far.
You're right. This is the most disagreement we've had this year.
So this record thing above my head, it's either going to get a lot better for me or a hell of a lot worse, or we'll split them and
I think we can both agree on the next game.
Next one, I believe so. Seattle going to the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams just super underhanded, shorthanded.
Rams suck.
Honestly, I don't see anything for the Los Angeles Rams. You want to play maybe a chance on the defense, but even then, that feels like fool's gold. For Seattle, I think that defense is going to be in play because the Rams are the worst offense. They're playing with a backup. They've lost 2 of their top worst receivers. Cam Akers has been better, and you saw what Josh Jacobs did last week, so maybe you go Cam Akers if you are real desperate, but that's about it. For Seattle, you're going to play Kenneth Walker. You're going to play DK Metcalf. You're going to play Tyler Lockett. Don't overthink any of those there. Geno Smith is an interesting flex or a streaming option, but I think there's better options this week. As I mentioned in the Jacksonville-Detroit game, we've got Lawrence and Golf. So maybe a deeper dive or a super flex option, but he is still out there. So Seattle, a lot to play for. Rams season over. I know where you're going with this, but we're going to agree. Who do you got?
Yeah, you can't pick the Rams if you're sane. So Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle is just the better team here, and the Rams are complete dumpster fire right now. All right, another one of those that you might look back and go, this was one of the games of the year, games of the week. Miami going to San Francisco to play the 49ers. Both teams look like playoff Super Bowl aspirations are definitely in the fold. For the Dolphins, you want to tread lightly with Tua. The Niners have a very good defense. I think Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, both going to be in your lineup. Tua is at least in consideration, probably in your lineup, but you might not like your results here. And Jeff Wilson could be there as well. For San Francisco, keep an eye on Debo. He is definitely highly questionable for this week. Really didn't practice at all this week. Christian McCaffrey is going to be in your lineup. If Debo misses, Kittle and Ayuk get a little bit more of a bump. Both of those should be in your consideration or in your lineup either way. Fantasy wise, this could be an all out score fest, or this could be a surprisingly low scoring game. Miami does have a pretty good track record against San Francisco, though. So, big game for both. Miami now a half game behind Buffalo due to the Bills' win last night against the Patriots. The Niners now a game up in that division, trying to climb the NFC standings. So, who gets it done?
Yeah, I know you normally look at it as Miami going all the way to San Francisco, but it's a late game. It's not an early game, so I think that tends to help Miami, giving a little bit extra time sort of recover from the jet lag. And they have beaten so many surprise teams that you would not normally think that the Dolphins, especially if you look at last year under Brian Flores, that I said it with the recaps, but what a difference McDaniels has made to Tua, longest active streak of passes attempted without an interception. Tua Tagovailoa, 174. That is very damn impressive right there. Have to give the nod to Miami, as I know San Francisco has a potent defense, has a very potent offense, but Miami has just defied logic this year, winning games that you would not normally think they would win, having an offense in a shootout in a game that normally you would not think that logically possible. And you normally look at this, and if you look at that team from last year, you go, okay, they don't have a prayer in San Francisco, but seeing what they have done to teams like Chicago, for example, I think Miami can get the job done on the road, on the opposite coast, in the late game against San Francisco. Very confident going Miami.
I'm going to take Miami as well. There's one thing you didn't mention in this, and that is that Coach McDaniels actually came from the San Francisco 49ers. He knows this organization. He knows Kyle Shanahan's game plans pretty well. He knows how that team ticks. So he's going to know what they're planning. It's going to help this defense. It's going to help this offense beat it. I think that's going to be a huge factor in this game.
So that's like when the John Gruden Buccaneers went against the Raiders, John Gruden's former team, and he knew all the schematics, he knew all the plays, and they
Yeah, you know the
absolutely
players,
owed
you
him.
know the strengths, and I think that's going to be a big factor. The Dolphins have been very, very good. That defense has slowly been improving, and frankly, San Francisco was not as convincing last week against New Orleans as you might have wanted them to be. So maybe there's some struggles that they're trying to work through as well. Jimmy G is one of
And
those very inconsistent quarterbacks
how
as well.
how healthy is CMC? That also.
That's a big thing. He might not play. It's still possible. That sounds like he's going to, but he could, take an awkward hit and go out very early, and then you're down to, Mason or Ty Davis Price or Tevin Coleman as your running back, and
We
that's
have
a big
no
downgrade.
idea who they are.
Because remember, last year it was Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Elijah Mitchell. Two of those are on the other sideline. The other one's on IR. So, big risk for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to take the Dolphins as well. Another big matchup. Kansas City going to Cincinnati to play the Bengals.
It's like primetime games in the late slate.
Yeah, that 4:00 window is real juicy this week. Cincinnati, this is a rematch of the AFC Championship game with Cincinnati won to go to the Super Bowl. Kansas City, you're going to play Pat Mahomes. You're going to play Travis Kelce. You probably should play Juju if he plays, and then Isaiah Pacheco is an option. Keep an eye on the Joe Mixon news. If he plays, he is going to be the number one. If not, Samaje Perine is going to have another big week opportunity. For the Bengals, you're going to play Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase sounds like he's going to be back. This is going to be a high-scoring game. You probably want to play him and T. Higgins as well. This is a big game. Cincinnati, we both picked Baltimore over Denver because it's Denver. So Cincinnati has to win this game to keep pace. Kansas City has to win this game to remain a game up on the rest of the AFC because the Bills are already at 9-3. The Dolphins, we both picked them. They both be 9-3. So they have to win this game to stay up. Big game for both. Kansas City with some revenge on the mind. Cincinnati trying to get the ball rolling, getting healthy, get everything going in the right direction. So big game. Who gets the win?
Yeah, it's tough because I think Cincinnati is going to be one of the hardest opponents that the Chiefs have faced as of yet. That being said, I tend to go the way of the Chiefs just because of the unit as a whole. People get injured, they plug people in, They do unbelievable things. It doesn't matter who they put where. They're almost like the Borg. And Cincinnati, I definitely have to compliment them. They've done a heck of a job without Jamar Chase. All of a sudden, they've figured out the strategy, how to win after that stumble, after that week after he was knocked out. And then Cincinnati just screwed the pooch and had a horrible game against the Browns. But I don't think they're at a place yet. Now, I could be totally wrong, and they could definitely upset the Chiefs. But until that actually happens, you have to pick the better quarterback, who is Patrick Mahomes. We have seen him do unbelievable, amazing things, and he's the better quarterback. They're the better unit, and I think they can take one from Cincinnati on the road.
This is a tough one to pick, but I'm going to take Cincinnati. It's going to come down to basically how this team reacts to, I believe Joe Mixon's going to play and Jamar Chase. If they come out and they are 100%, they feel like they're all in rhythm, Cincinnati can roll, and they can roll really, really fast. We saw them have a big second half against Kansas City last year in Kansas City in the AFC Championship, a big, big moment. Kansas City, I think, is without Tyreek Hill. They're not as good as that team that faced them last year. We've seen them have some issues with Tennessee when it was Malik Willis. We've seen him have some struggles last week against the Rams. They weren't as convincing as you would hope against a third-string quarterback. So I think Cincinnati's rolling. I think they're getting it done at the right time, and they want to win this division. They have to keep up with Baltimore. Though Baltimore can lose any game, apparently. I think Cincinnati gets the job done. Just a hunch. I don't love it, but this is a tough game. Either side, like Joel said, either side could easily win this game. It wouldn't surprise me if Kansas City won. It wouldn't surprise Joel if Cincinnati won, but I'm going to take the home team. You said the better quarterback is Pat Mahomes. I agree, but I don't think it's that big of a margin. All right, last game before we get to the night ones. Los Angeles Chargers going to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. For the Chargers, you're going to play Justin Herbert. You're going to play Austin Ekeler. You're going to play Keenan Allen. No Mike Williams, so maybe Josh Palmer, DeAndre Carter, or Garrett Everett at tight end in your options. But again, Herbert, Ekeler, Allen for sure. For the Raiders, keep an eye on the injury report with Josh Jacobs. He played last week with this injury. He's probably going to play this week, and he played really, really well last week. Chargers not great against the run. So if he plays, you want to have him in your lineup. This could be an interesting streaming option for Derek Carr. Devontae Adams is going to be in your lineup as well as Foster Moreau, who's been pretty good, and Matt Collins could be a flex consideration on the back end. Chargers, outside looking in right now, really can't afford to stub their team against a team they should be better than, or at least in the standings they're better than. Las Vegas, though, seems to be rounding the corner with Josh McDaniels' offense. They seem to be getting the ball rolling in the right direction. Who gets this win?
Yeah, when you're talking about better quarterback, definitely is, I think, Justin Herbert, as Derek Carr has definitely had his struggles in recent days. They've turned the corner, and you're looking at Josh Jacobs all of a sudden stepping up and becoming a lethal weapon. 303 yards from scrimmage, most in Raiders history. Added 2 touchdowns. He is only the 4th player Super Bowl era with over 300 yards and 2 TDs. Adrian Peterson was the last one to do in 2007. And Jacobs now leads the entire NFL in rushing yards and missed tackles and fantasy points for running backs. And that's something to definitely take into account. But still, I tend to think the Chargers getting that win in Week 12 was definitely turning the corner. I think they can beat the Raiders, even though the Raiders are starting to become more explosive. They're starting to gel. They're starting to buy into McDaniels, what he's selling. But Chargers still, I think, are the better team. And I'm going to go with Herbert and Ekeler over Carr and Jacobs.
I'm taking the Raiders. I really am buying what Josh Jacobs has been doing. I think the Raiders are starting to look like the team that they thought they would be before the season. Devontae Adams getting more involved. They're figuring it out without Darren Waller, without Hunter Renfrow. They're doing pretty well. And the Chargers, they drop games like this too often. And it just feels to me like a game they're going to come
I
in
could
and
see
just
that.
stub their toe. And unfortunately, as good as the Chargers can be at their best, they tend to play down to the level of their competition or up, but in this case, it's going to be down, and they're going to fall a little bit short. Remember seeing them last year, win and in against this Raiders team. They couldn't get the job done. The Raiders do have their number, it seems like, as well. All right, then we move to the Sunday night football game. It's the Colts. It's the Cowboys. You're going to play Jonathan Taylor. You're probably going to kick around Michael Pittman Jr., and that could be end of list for the Colts. For the Cowboys, you're going to play Zeke. You probably can play Pollard. And then Michael Gallup, keep an eye on that illness. He's going to be flex consideration. CeeDee Lamb is going to be in your lineup. And Dalton Schultz has been very good at tight end since he's become healthy. Dallas, 8-3 team. Indianapolis looks like they're going nowhere fast. So I think I know where you're going with this, but who you got?
Yeah, it's very hard to back Indianapolis at all in this one. They had a very rough game against Pittsburgh. Dallas also has a pretty legit defense. It's just hard picking them since their main weapon is Jonathan Taylor. And Dallas, of course, has two legit weapons, Tony Pollard and, of course, Ezekiel Elliott. So it's just hard at all going with Indianapolis. If they had struggled against Pittsburgh, how bad a time are they going to have against Dallas in the Big D? Got to go the Cowboys.
Yeah, you got to take the Cowboys as well. If the Colts are smart, they'll run Jonathan Taylor like crazy, slow this game down. If they can get the running game going, they can compete. But I think Dallas is just too good at the end of the day. They'll get this win. Then we go on to Monday Night Football, the NFC South showdown between the 4-8 New Orleans Saints and the division-leading 5-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the Saints, keep an eye on Alvin Kamara. Some injury concern, but it sounds like he's going to play. And Chris Olave is going to be in your lineup as well. Juwan Johnson is a tight end playable option, but he had a really goose egg bad week last week. For the Buccaneers, Mike Evans does not usually do well against the Saints, but that's because of Marshawn Lattimore. Haven't seen anything on Lattimore's status, but he's been out for quite a while. He could be a good play. Chris Godwin as well in your lineup. And then Rachaad White, I think, is the play you want between him and Fournette, but both are going to be options as well. I don't think you go in the quarterback market here because Brady has not been good against the Saints, and Andy Dalton has just not been good. All right, so this is a big game for Tampa Bay. With a win, they go to 500. They maintain at least a game lead on Atlanta with, depending on their game, they could be up 2. New Orleans with a win gets within a game of Tampa Bay as well and would have split the season series. Never know what can happen from there. So, Joel, you're wearing the Bucs hat. I know you're a Bucs homer. Who gets the win?
Yeah, I may be a Bucs homer, but I am not having a lot of confidence in this team. What you just said, the Bucs do not do well against the Saints. That is an absolute key factor when you're looking at who's going to win this game. Is Bucs have been up and down. Just all of a sudden, you had the Tom Brady leading the 9-second comeback win. Then they went to Munich, ended up beating the Seahawks quite surprisingly. Then they come back against the Cleveland Browns, and we have the clock management. What the heck is going on here? Deal. And so now we come up here at Saints prime time. Should give any Buck fan shudders when you hear that it's the Saints in prime time. Yes, even these Saints. It's not a Sean Payton Saints, it's a Dennis Allen Saints, but still, as you have to wonder, as I mentioned earlier, Buck's big key issue, no Tristan Wirfs, going to be less protection for Tom Brady. He's going to be more pressured. Whether or not Marshawn Lattimore is or is not playing definitely will be a big factor. Then, of course, you end up having what's going on between Brady and Evans, and why doesn't things seem to be in sync? And Godwin seems to be getting most of the targets when it comes to the two. And Brady himself at times seems to have missed a step, and then he can have moments of sheer brilliance and then moments of sheer what the heck just happened. So, as much as it pains me to say this, as awful a team as they are, the Bucs just have not been convincing division leaders, unlike the year when they went to the Super Bowl. Different coaches, different philosophies, different chemistries, different styles. I hate saying this. I really, really hate saying this, but I don't have a lot of confidence in the Bucs. I have to take the Saints just with how much they have been owned by the New Orleans team on prime time occasions. And yeah, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope it's a loss for me in this pick. but I've got to pick the Saints.
I'm going to go back to something I said earlier from Saints fans. Dennis Allen should be shot. That was their reaction to how bad of a coach he's been for this team. I don't have any confidence in New Orleans. I only have a very small amount of certain things in Tampa Bay, confidence in them. But that little bit more, it is a home game, is enough for me. I'm going to take the Bucks. New Orleans has just been atrocious, and maybe Andy Dalton has one of those games where he just pulls some magic out of his hat, but I don't see it happening against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, I think they want to at least put the Saints out of this conversation. So that's 9 out of 15 we disagree on. That's 60% disagreement rate. So that 7-game difference could get a lot better, could get a lot worse. But only time will tell as we disagree on 60%
One
of the
way
games.
or the other.
Yeah, so far I've got one of the 9 with Buffalo over New England, but the 8 on Sunday will be very, very big. All right, so quickly, not quickly, tell us your final thought, Joel.
Okay, my final thought is a case of it actually was, if we were having a normal show, I would debut a new Sports Shuffle segment, but since it's a bit of a long show, I'll save that for a more normal show when we have more normally. But it falls under the did I do that like Steve Urkel from Family Matters? But
do that?
change it around to did they do that? Are you ready for this headline?
Oh boy.
Florida woman sues Kraft Heinz for $5 million, says mac and cheese preparation is misleading. And the whole TLDR of the suit is because the packaging says ready in 3.5 minutes, and this plaintiff is alleging that, in fact, that is misleading and is a part of a class action suit. Yes, you actually have a lawyer out there who initiated a lawsuit because somebody thinks that mac and cheese takes too long to prepare. And that is my final thought, because I'm sure that ranks up there with very super important stuff. Good God, what is going on with our society?
You know, we have the student loan forgiveness that affects millions of people going through the legal system now, and that's an important thing. But thank God someone's going after the mac and cheese people, because that was number 2 on the agenda for big things that helps America. Oh my God. Well, I guess we are going to debut a segment of did they do that? Because I'm going to stay with football, but I'm going to talk about Jacksonville. Did they really put their mascot in a Speedo last week? They had the big fuzzy head, a skin-tight suit, and a red, white, and blue American flag Speedo. I swear I had to have had a fever dream, because no team, none, is going to do that. But I've seen it more than once now on pictures and videos of this game, including when I was walking through the scores. I'm like, just in the background, I'm like, why? There's many things a good mascot should be able to do. They should be able to be funny without saying words. They should be able to take a good picture and interact without talking. They shouldn't be wearing Speedos and skin suits on the sidelines. That is just me. So,
did you?
Maybe that's why Baltimore lost. They were looking at the mascot's Speedo going, oh, that's gross.
Excuse me, but did you actually see that? I know it was I sent you the video that you said it was cringy. It was, I think it was from about 9 or 10 years ago, that it actually had somebody from the Jacksonville Jaguars literally going around to local TV stations and other and they were actually doing a legit pose / dance called Jaguaring, and I'm going, are you kidding me? They
if you want to see it, YouTube Jaguaring, and
it's like
it is very, very cringy. As the kids would say, that's cringe. Just like the Speedo. Anyways, thank God someone's going after mac and cheese. That made my day. That made my month. And it's Christmas time, and that was the bit that made my month. That someone's going after those SOBs, making mac and cheese take longer than 3.5 minutes. Damn you, and the horse you rode in on. Anywho. All right, this has been long enough. So I'm Flying Ryan Gilchrist, along with
Tampa Motor Mouth, Joel Verone. The red light is on.
Yeah, hopefully back to normal next week. Some oddities this week kind of threw us off schedule. So should be back to 2 shows next week. Should be back to a recap and a preview show.
What is normal? Anywho.
Oh, we don't know anymore. That's a world where mac and cheese takes 3.5 minutes to cook. And with that, we own.